Come, Grogu. If you wish to become a Mandalorian, there is much work to attend to.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Talking Smack, or as Alex and Matt like to call it.
Hey, everybody, an old man's talking.
I am the proverbial old man, and we are here to talk superheroes, movies, animation, and comics. I am the host, Josh Scar, and joining me this week is Matt. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing all right. My bones are a little achy, but I'm making it work. We also have Alex joining us this week. Alex, how are you doing? You're still on mute.
I was unmuting myself, sir. How dare you?
How dare
there
you
was
not
barely
be
a
unmuted?
pause.
Guys, this is extremely unprofessional. We have a guest.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
Edit all this
I am
out.
doing
Edit all
quite
this out.
well. I am doing quite well. I'm enjoying the fact that it is snowing currently.
Ooh,
Yeah,
nice.
I blame you for this weather we have, Alex, because last week you were bragging about how we had 80-degree weather, and now it's snowing.
Exactly. I'm getting my house painted and it's freezing, so that's wonderful.
We went to the zoo today and we were literally out there and was like, oh, now it's snowing. And we're at the zoo. This is at the end of April.
It's like the complete opposite of what's going on over here. It's been nice and cold, and now all of a sudden it's like 86 outside,
Great.
and I feel personally offended by it.
I was just out on the West Coast like 2 weeks ago, and it was a really, really nice like 60s and 70s for most of the time. And yeah, just beautiful. But
We get
as
it,
you
Josh,
have
you're
heard,
Coastal Elite. We get it.
as you have heard, we have a very special fourth joining us this week. This week we are joined by Catrina Dennis, who is a writer, performer, producer, and she's also the co-host of the Padro Pascal podcast and What's Glup. And Catrina, please say hello and let everyone know a little bit more about yourself.
Hi, yeah. So I host a bunch of cool podcasts with my friends. I have been a journalist in the entertainment space. I'm a streamer, an actor. That's right. I do that too. And I just really like nerdy stuff. And I was brought up in the nerdy space. And so it's kind of what I use to define my career.
Multi-hyphenate nerd.
Yes.
Perfect.
So I feel like this is the right podcast to be on.
Oh yeah, I've been waiting to find an excuse to have you on. I've been listening to your podcasts ever since Hanging with Team Kanan. So
I love
say
it. A classic.
say hi to Jonah and Jeremy for me if you're still in contact with them or if they're actually listening. Hi,
Yeah.
Jonah and Jeremy.
My faves. I miss that show a lot. It was just like so good, and I still kind of reference back sometimes when I have like new friends that get into Rebels, and I'm like, oh well, we have like an episode by episode podcast about Rebels that I did like almost like 5 years ago, but you know.
Josh was mad at me on your behalf when he found out I hadn't watched Rebels.
Oh my gosh.
I've been
sorry.
plugging
Are
Hanging
you-
with Team Kanan on our Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have been watching alongside the podcast More Civilized Age.
Nice.
And they're about to start Rebels. So I'm like, man, hold on. I'm going to watch it. And maybe at that point I will jump into that as well. Maybe I'll double dip. But he has not let me live it down. So sorry.
Well, I mean, you should have been watching Rebels from the beginning anyway.
Well, Josh, I had things to do like, go on dates, go to parties, drink beer.
You're cooler and younger than I am. I get it.
Hey, there's only so much time in the day that Josh assigns himself to yelling at clouds. Then he watches Rebels.
Some days you're the cloud.
Oh.
We have Catrina here this week to talk about Mandalorian Season 3, and we are going to do that as soon as we hear from Dan over at Casting Views. We'll be right back.
Fancy taking a humorous trip down a random topic each week? You do? Well, you're in luck. Casting Views, presented by me, Dan, and a host of guests, bring you just that. With topics from the world of entertainment, science, sport, and everyday life, there's bound to be a topic that's going to inform and amuse. Catch Casting Views every Sunday on all listening platforms now.
And we are back. We are here to talk about The Mandalorian Season 3, which just wrapped up on Wednesday. Was that April 19th? Not that it's really important. April 18th?
It was the 19th.
19th. Okay. I can't remember which day 420 was, which I don't think that's a good thing for listeners for me to say because they might think things.
No, the week started with my anniversary, which is the 17th of April, and that was Monday, and so that's how I counted my days out.
I should have just thought of that. I should have just thought of Catrina's
Thursday.
anniversary to remind myself of what the dates were.
A big week for you. Anniversary, Mandalorian. If you're into it,
Picard.
The funny Picard. Okay, yeah. Yep. Let's talk about that.
You and Leo have that coming up. I promise you guys will have that episode happen. I will find a way to make it happen.
Okay, all right.
I already said I would host it.
Don't sound like that. It was okay. Anyway, that's a different.
He's pulling an Eeyore with that one. I'll host
I'm just
it.
letting. Hey, I am all too happy to talk about TNG.
The Mandalorian. Let's do it.
What's the Mandalorian?
You're not following the way, Alex. You have strayed from the way.
Our new friend, our guest, is like, I cannot believe I'm on this show. We are 6 minutes in, and we're still just bullshitting.
Yeah, so let's not waste any more of her time. Let's dive into this. The Mandalorian Season 3. Let's just dive right into initial thoughts. Catrina, as the guest, we'll let you start. How did you feel about Season 3 of The Mandalorian as a whole?
After the beautifully heavy emotions of Andor and the amount of crying I did during Obi-Wan, I kind of liked there being a more lighthearted and action-packed season. Like I have my criticisms of it, but like it was kind of like a breath of fresh air because I've been having too many feelings that are like sad while watching Star Wars, and like my heart didn't get broken too hard this season, so I enjoyed it. Like it was just fun to see like the toys go back in the toy box and what came of that. And Grogu is always MVP of the season, and I'm sure we're gonna get into it. But I know a lot of people, not a lot, but some people have opinions where it's like, I want the Mandalorian to be about the Mandalorian. And I was really pleased with the amount of Bo-Katan in this season and how important her presence was to her story rather than like, serving Din's story.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to, it doesn't totally sum up my feelings about it, but I think you mentioned Andor, which I think is a really good touch point where, like, I've had generally I've liked all the things that Star Wars has done in the last few years, with probably like one extremely notable exception. But I have my criticisms of it, but I'm watching Andor and I'm like, this is like what I want out of Star Wars. And
yeah,
with Mandalorian, I think it would be easy to come back and be like, oh, but it's not Andor, but also that's okay.
Yeah, it never was.
Yeah,
it was always a different show than Andor. And I think, I don't know, I feel like Star Wars fans, like, something is in our DNA and it makes us prepare for the worst and most hurtful outcomes ever. And I just like I enjoyed not feeling so much fear for certain characters' mortality this season.
Yeah,
like it was satisfying. And now I'm horrified because what if season 4 hurts?
Yeah, I mean, like, in general, I've always seen The Mandalorian as like it's just a fun, solid adventure show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this, again, it's not without flaws, but this is more of that, which is, cool.
Yeah, it's a different show. Okay, hold on, let me frame it into like guy speak. When you drive a Miata, it's very different from driving a Nissan pickup truck. And in this hypothetical situation, you like both of those things. But you don't look to, when you're looking to drive a pickup truck, you don't go try and drive expect the experience of driving a Miata. There you go.
Sure.
Boom. Star Wars.
Yeah, and I saw what you guys are talking about here between like coming in from having Andor late last year into this. I saw a really great tweet, which maybe Catrina, it might have even been you, where it had a picture of Andor and then it had a picture of the Swamp Thing pirate, and the tweet just said Star Wars can be both and should be both, and like perfect. 100%.
I don't think that was me, but that's fantastic, and I completely agree. I love that this series, this wonderful saga is something that could break my heart over, like, generational trauma and like the rise of fascism and all of these like themes that reflect my feelings as an adult. But then also there could be like murder teddy bears in it, and there's a little green dude just like getting thrown around set, and it's like totally normal.
There's a degree to which Star Wars is fundamentally about weirdos and freaks having adventures, and that's what the Mandalorian is. It's a bunch of weirdos and freaks, and I use those terms in the most loving way, like Grogu, Swamp Thing.
You called
pirate.
my guy Zeb. You called my guy Zeb a freak, and I took offense to that one.
Yeah, I'm watching an episode of Mandalorian, and then a few hours later, I see everyone on the internet like, oh my god, Glup Shido, and I'm like, oh, I guess some guy showed up, some beautiful freak.
Don't you disrespect Garazeb Aurelios like that, Captain Garazeb Aurelios?
It's not a disrespect. I mean it in the most loving way. Like Yoda, or as I've come to know him, old Grogu. He's a little freak, and I love him, and that's what Star Wars is about. And Mandalorian this season is full of little freaks that I love.
I'm really excited for you to start watching Rebels, because like, man, there are a lot of little freaks in that show.
That to me is Star Wars.
Yeah, and there's some good Clone Wars stuff in there, but I want to start talking Rebels now. We got to stay on point.
Sorry.
So anyway, I'm Picard season 3.
So
did we hear from Alex? Alex,
I don't think Alex, you're still on mute. What are some of your highs from Mandalorian season 3, Alex?
I'm confused. I really liked how focused it was on Boba Fett and the Bacta tank. That was really good. But I don't know why we're doing a recap of a show that happened over a year ago. I'm ready to talk about Mando season 4.
So
I see what you did there. I wish I had the rim shot sound effect in the soundboard.
But wouldn't it be great if The Mandalorian was 5 seasons long? I would just be lovely. I like the number 5 for a show. It's good. Just give me 5 seasons. I won't ask for more.
Or if Dave Filoni has his way, maybe 6 seasons in a movie.
Wait, hold on. Now I'm going to look up how many seasons there were of Rebels, because that may be exactly what's happening. There are 4. Yeah, so it's just 4 seasons and a movie.
4 plus what seems like a live action, basically Rebels follow up.
4.5 seasons and a movie about the New Republic that they will probably be in.
Yeah, Ahsoka is another one that I'm very excited for. But Alex, please continue talking about this most recent season of The Mandalorian.
Oh, okay. Well, they are doing a Mando movie. We already got that announced like a week or so ago at the Star Wars.
Yeah, that was one thing I wanted to bring up towards the end of the episode, is talking about like how we feel about this building up towards a quote unquote Mandoverse movie event, which we kind of talked about last week, but I would love to get Catrina's take on that too once we get to that point.
Well, I brought it up, so no, it was a weaker season, but there was some fun stuff in it that I particularly enjoyed. Mostly, I am happy, and Josh, you know why I'm happy. I am happy because
the armorer did not take off her helmet yet.
I love the armorer. She makes me happy.
Who doesn't?
I have a crush on her. I was dreading for about a week Because with the group I watched with, there was the week between the spies and the end, the return, where the internet was convinced that the armor was a spy, she was a traitor, she was working with Moff Gideon, she had betrayed them all, she was making all the Stormtrooper Beskar armor, and she was leading an assault on the capital ship. And I'm like, not my girl. No. And then all the Mandalorians are flying in with jetpacks, shooting shit, and she just swings up and just like, I'm just gonna use my hammer and pliers and beat the shit out of anything in my way.
I love her.
She is my
that
favorite
the
character,
armor.
just bar none.
She's a
Speaking
certified
of-
Star Wars weirdo, and we love her for it.
Weirdo.
Speaking of the armorer, in the I believe it's in the return, yeah, because we get the big fight scene. Did anyone else notice in the concept art that they put in the credits that the
Yep.
armor has Paz Vizsla's big minigun instead of her forging tools?
Yeah, I noticed that. I'm like, someone in the concept department doesn't understand the basic character arc. No, seriously,
Yeah, one would imagine.
what I got out of the season, what I have loved the armor just because she doesn't have a weapon other than her forging tools. She's an imposing figure that the Mandalorians respect. She commands respect from anyone she comes in interaction with, and she is mission driven. Her mission is, I'm going to make armor and build my covert. What the end of season 1, she loses it all. She kills some stormtroopers by smashing their face masks in one of the most brutal, awesome scenes I've ever seen. She disappears for a season, comes back in season 3, where she apparently has set up shop underneath some space station, still doing her thing, teaching the Mandalorian about how to use a darksaber and why he's terrible at it. Beginning of season 3, she's rebuilt things. She's still building stuff, and at the end of it, she has what she wanted. I'm at the Great Forge. I don't give a shit who's running Mandalore. I'm leading ceremonies. There was a pool of water. I've smashed a bunch of stuff in the face. My life is great, and I love it for it.
Good for her. Good for her,
It's like-
honestly. Those are goals.
Yeah. It's nice to see some happy endings. I just, I rip paths and stuff, but like that was just one. We just lost like one this season.
Yeah.
It was
But we
pretty
gained
great.
back IG-11 too, so
We did. Yep.
And IG-12.
oh, I
So-
should make a sound. IG-12 is probably one of Matt's favorite things from this season.
Nice.
Well, yeah, I mean, Grogu gets a mech. He gets a Gundam, and that rules.
I thought that too. I was like, oh my god, it's like he has his own little giant mech.
Yeah, it's
Like-
honestly, I mean, they almost lost me for the entire season by getting rid of it at the end, I don't need that droid around. I need him to be hollowed out with a little seat in the middle,
I mean, other than the fact that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have a lawsuit prepared against that thing, you completely ripped off Krang.
I don't think Disney's sweating that though. I don't think Disney's sweating that.
You don't think that?
I think Bob's going to be just fine.
Oh man.
And speaking of little freaks, going back to Matt's point, we got the return of Babu Frick, or the I guess what would technically be his introduction in a certain point of view.
Is one of them actually Babu Frick, or are they just like a bunch of little Babu Fricks? Like the way Grogu is a baby Yoda.
I'm pretty sure it is Babu Frick, as the same as R5D4 is the same droid from the start of A New Hope.
Don't even get me fucking started on that. You want to talk about low points of the season? Don't even get me started. Anyway, I'm sorry.
That was new information for Matt. I think R5 showed up in season 2, or maybe in the Mandalorian episodes of Book of Boba Fett. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they confirmed that it was R5D4 way back when. And I had to break the news to Matt.
I've only found the R5 thing, but I haven't heard the Babu thing before. I thought that they were just like Anzellan guys.
It could be. Maybe I'm absolutely wrong, but I wouldn't be shocked if it was Babu Frick, just because that's one of the few things that I know most everyone enjoyed from Rise of Skywalker.
Oh
The
yeah.
best thing from the worst movie.
The one upgrade I would now make to Galaxy's Edge is to add little pockets. I think I've said this elsewhere, but like add little pockets like there are on Navarro, and just like have some Babu Frick puppets like working in there.
That would be amazing. I would love that. Then have Grief Kargas or guys who would be similar to Grief Karga that speak Anzellan and just translate for you.
Yep, exactly. Please add it to Galaxy's Edge. Thanks very much.
So here's a merchandising question for you. We know Grogu is a merchandising bonanza. Would Babu Frick in his shirtless mechanic glory be as big of a seller, if not more so, than, like, let's say a Porg?
Only if you can squeeze it and it says "Bad baby, no squeezy."
I don't think so. Okay, so they do have them in Galaxy's Edge. You can
They
buy
do.
a little like animatronic Babu Frick, and it's like the exact size and everything. But I think it's just Babu Frick, so he only has his like Rise of Skywalker ish phrases. But there is one. You can definitely buy one.
Okay, I must have missed that. I went early last year and I did not see it.
Yeah, I only saw this one really recently because I went to the Orlando park, and I hadn't been back to Disneyland in like, I don't know, 3 months. So I just saw that in the Droid repair shop. They've got them.
I do think that in terms of a bonanza, if the $1 billion movie didn't do it, the TV show probably won't, but it should. Like, I should, speaking, I went to the zoo today. My 3-month-old daughter wore a little Baby Yoda sweater. I should be able to get one with a little Babu Frick on it.
Okay.
If there was justice in the world.
Support that. Yeah.
Okay, Matt, you've mentioned going to the zoo
All
like
right.
3
More
times.
Babu merch.
Name 3 things you've seen at the zoo, because now I don't believe you went anywhere. It's just a little too like I'm giving my
We don't have time for this. Katrina's got places to be, and we've got like 30 minutes of recording still to go.
Thank God. Thank Christ.
You could have just said sloth, giraffe, and an elephant, Matt. Like, it's not that hard.
We know Madison hasn't had giraffes since 20 BC when they died out.
Don't dox me, dude.
So I do want to, Katrina, I'll start with you. The convert episode, that one was probably the most polarizing episode, and maybe the one that made a lot of people check out this season, where I believe it's the convert episode. The Dr. Pershing episode, where it's kind of sandwiched between a shorter Bo-Katan and Din Djarin storyline. Where we focus primarily on Coruscant with Dr. Pershing and his reintegration into the New Republic as a working member of society. Katrina, can you share some thoughts that you had about that episode?
So I think that episode, I didn't have final thoughts on it until this season finale because it tied together a plot that has been introduced from episode 1. Like, why did Moff Gideon, why did the Empire want that baby? And it was to extract stuff from him to get to be able to produce clones. And Moff Gideon was doing it himself, and that's why Pershing was such a big deal. So, I mean, like, I approach this like a lot like, I guess from the beginning, I've been watching The Mandalorian from the same perspective that I read Del Rey Star Wars books on. Where, usually you have like an overarching plot, but every once in a while, like, somebody's going to show up in a cameo and have a funky little chapter here that ties into a book that's coming out in 5 years. And that happened a lot in like Aftermath. That happened a lot in like especially the TFA phase of Del Rey books. And so, like, to me, like, my perspective is like I'm reading this all like a book, and it's mainly about the Mandalorian and the Mandalorians. And every once in a while, someone funky shows up, and they have like a 10-page chapter, and like, or we just like tie into another perspective of the story that we just need at that moment. So that's why I wasn't really disturbed at the end by the like Pershing like change of pace, and like it was nice to see Katie O'Brien back because she was such a fan favorite, and that I liked that they gave her character something important to do that wasn't just like lackey work. And yeah, so tying it all back to that, to me it just kind of like feels like reading a Star Wars novel, like where every couple chapters, like we spend a little time with this character who's going to be important at the end of the book for some reason, but we don't know yet.
I think a lot of people kind of view this stuff, and no shade if that applies to anyone here on this call, or just anyone listening. If this is how you watch TV, that's fine. But I think people like kind of see these shows as like every episode is telling a story of a season, and anything that is not doing that is kind of wasted time. And like you said, Katrina, like this does end up leading to something with that main story. But one of the cool things you can do on TV is just once in a while you do an episode that let's shift our focus, and like we're going to do a one-off about some other characters who they're not totally new people, like we've seen them before. It's one of those things that I appreciate about that's a thing TV can do. Like once in a while we're just going to try something different. My biggest criticism of that episode is I wish they had just done it, because I think having it bookended by like stuff that we are actually following, like the Mando stuff and the Bo-Katan stuff at the beginning and end, I think made some people feel like, what did I just watch 20 minutes of or 30 minutes of or however long that bit was? Why wasn't the whole episode the stuff about the castle, right? So I sort of wish that they had just like gone for it, where like beginning to end, we're just going to do a one-off episode, and then it is what it is, and then eventually it does. You kind of see one of the reasons we did that later on in the season, but for now it's just we're going to check in on this little slice of life and like what's going on in the galaxy.
Yeah. I think maybe it wouldn't have been so jarring if like you said, they finished an arc and then like that could be the pause between the
Yeah.
arcs. But yeah, I totally get that perspective. But I love the episode. I was excited to see Pershing back. Like we met Omid at Celebration in Anaheim, and so it was really exciting to see that he got to come back and give that character a little more depth. And yeah, and I like the way it tied into Gideon's storyline. If like Katie O'Brien's character is trying to help him with his like ultimate cloning plan.
Yeah. It is pretty weird that like the New Republic doesn't let these people have names.
Yeah.
But that's probably nothing to worry about there.
So I do have a question for both of you, since you both rather like the episode and say it ties in. How does it tie into the last episode? Because the episode is about her manipulating him, trying to get him to restart his cloning stuff. Then immediately when he's like, okay, I'll do it, betrays him, brain fries him. But it turns out that Gideon is making clones, does need that tech. So how does that help?
See, I took that as not that you weren't asking me, but I took that as Gideon got what he wanted out of Pershing, and he wanted to make sure no one else could.
But then why the long manipulation if he's not being assigned to look at it and all that stuff? Like they purposely have this convoluted plan to get him to lead him. Why didn't she just like toss him off the side of the cliff or something like that? Like he just disappears down a tunnel. Why does she need him to go get a piece of equipment that is ultimately confiscated, that has nothing on it, that then?
Because it takes suspicion away from her.
But if he was just tossed off the side of a cliff and she's breaking out all the time, she's not being looked at.
But she might be. It's an easier way for her to not be suspected.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't buy that.
Especially with like, I would say that like the watch on them is also tight enough that if she pulled anything as blatant, she might have not gotten away with it.
But the watch isn't tight on them.
And she's also
They've said
kind
that
of sadistic,
repeatedly,
so.
like, I leave all the time.
And I will say for me, like the thing that I like about that episode is not that they tie it in later. Like it's cool that they find a way to do that. However successful they are is, I guess, as we've seen, up for debate. But for me, it's not a successful episode because it later factors into the overall plot. You know what I mean? I think it's just like an interesting diversion, which works for you or it doesn't. And I will say, it's not a perfect episode. Like it does, there is a degree that it feels like you're watching all these scenes, and there's a degree where you're like, oh, Dave Filoni watched Andor. he watched Andor, and now he's trying to do an Andor to a certain degree. But it's just, it got a lot of hate and vitriol that I don't think was fully deserved. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying here, Alex. So I guess, to answer your question is I don't have a good answer to your question, but also I care about your question, but I don't, that's not the thing I care about in the episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm in the side that I was not a big fan of the episode. I found it really slow. It actually took me like 2.5 days to get through it. I just watched it in little pieces because it was very transparent that Katie O'Brien's character was gonna betray Pershing, and I just I didn't see how it tied in, especially with, as you mentioned, Matt, where it's bookended with the Mando stuff that I am invested in, and so this story in between really just felt like a non sequitur, and like, okay, it's clearly building towards something, but you got to give me a reason to care right now, and right now I don't.
Sure. And I can totally see why it's not someone's, especially if the thing you are into is, I want to see how every episode furthers the Mandalorian story. I can see how it would be an not upsetting or disappointing episode, maybe is a better thing. It just, I'm not saying I thought it was the best episode of the season. I thought it was fine. I thought it was good.
See, for me, if you remove that entire sequence from that story and just have Katie O'Brien's appearance in the pirate where Carson Teva goes and they basically re-explain, oh yeah, she's in the Imperial Reformation program. Her name is this, and how much influence she has over the leader of them, that she's able to convince him not to have Carson Teva get those people and the assistance on Navarro. And then later on, last episode, or episode 7, she's telling Gideon this. That does the entire arc and the backfall of where she is, what she's doing, without that entire middle section that doesn't, convert that doesn't do anything. I enjoyed watching it, but ultimately I feel like in the end of the season, none of that was needed. Because there was no story. To me, it didn't tell me anything further about Gideon, didn't tell me anything further about her, other than she's evil. Well, anytime you have a bureaucrat show up and deny help to people, they're evil.
Sure.
I do think
people
need help.
I think that's the main point of the episode, though, is it's laying the groundwork for maybe whatever happens in season 4 or beyond with Ahsoka, where we see that the New Republic is so laden with red tape and bureaucracy that they can't really be effective, because they have to set up the sequels eventually. Yeah, and this is probably where I think that's trying to lay that groundwork.
Yeah, I think it's useful from a world building perspective, which is kind of what you were saying, Josh. But I don't think it's necessarily like useless, which is, you didn't use the word useless, Alex. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. But I don't think it's useless to like just see, we've spent several seasons in this sort of post original trilogy world, and we've only gotten glimpses of what that really looks like. So I think seeing a beefier piece of here's how the New Republic operates, for better or worse, is useful. Whether or not one thinks it's good is again up for debate. But it's something that, Dave Filoni cut his teeth on Clone Wars, right? And one of the things that people love about that show is how he recontextualizes and, kind of shades in the prequel era a little bit better. They very clearly seem to be interested in doing that for the sequels now, or at least kind of putting some of that stuff in the background. So like, I don't know. I think it's useful in that sense, even if maybe to some people the way it adds up in terms of like the characters is not all there. Sometimes, we're just dealing with Star Wars as a place, where maybe this isn't the show for it, maybe it is, but I appreciate it in that sense, if nothing else.
So the one episode that I really remember people going nuts over is the episode Guns for Hire, which is the one that has Lizzo and Jack Black, but it's also the Bryce Dallas Howard directed episode, which she usually does really great work. And it's also a really interesting, like, here's a Star Wars procedural. And I really enjoyed that one a lot for the most part. I thought the visual effects budget kind of took a hit in that episode. Like to nitpick, seriously, like this is just like a nitpick where at the very end of the episode when Bo-Katan lights up the Darksaber, that effect, I don't know if it's ever looked worse in this show or in Star Wars in general. That one really took me out of the like moment of it. I'm like, ooh, that doesn't look the best. But I really enjoyed Lizzo and Grogu's little arc where she's just immediately enthralled with him, and she's just like, I'm your new mama.
Yeah, like I was like, I was been joking a little bit, but like Lizzo and Jack Black, whatever their characters' names are, they feel like quintessential Star Wars weirdos. Like those characters feel like, we have a 4-episode arc of Clone Wars, and in the middle we're doing an episode where like Obi-Wan has to go to a weird planet to find a lead, and then he has to deal with these weirdos. Like it feels like that you could have dropped them right into an episode of Clone Wars or something like that. It's like, I know a lot of people were really upset about those cameos for whatever reason, and I personally don't get it, because it's just like we have a couple of zany characters, and we're doing basically some quintessential Mandalorian stuff where it's like Mandalorian has an adventure that is not directly moving forward his plot, but also is, you know what I mean, where that's like maybe it's not the best example of that, but like the first season of the show is that all over, where it's like, oh, I'm doing a job for this person, I'm doing a job for this person, I'm doing a job for this person. We're moving it forward inch by inch, but also the meat of the show is I'm helping these people out and then I'm moving on,
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I think it's already been said, but it felt like a basic, not basic, but a run of the mill episode of Clone Wars, where like you have these colorful characters with interesting designs that are gravity defying, and it was cool to like see that kind of bridge to real life. Like, what do rich people, super look like at this time in the galaxy? Because we got a glimpse of it in the sequel trilogy, and so it was nice to like just spend that time and like have Mando run that like side quest with Poe. Like, it's all character development in the end. And I thought the cameos were really cute. So
Christopher
whatever.
Lloyd. Love
Christopher
it.
Lloyd was there.
I believe you mean Doc Brown, because as we know, Star Wars was a long time ago, and he has a DeLorean.
You're right.
That's true.
Alex, when you're right, and you're right. I can admit it.
Don't you mean the Klingon guy from Star Trek 3?
That's the future.
Wow. Wow.
I know some Star Trek things.
Look at Josh trying to flex his muscles here.
Well, he's on camera. We saw him frantically Googling. Was Doc Brown ever in Star Trek? 3. He was in 3. No, my favorite part about that was the Mandalorian just kicking random droids. That's his interrogation technique. We're just going to kick everyone until one of them goes off.
There are some things he's simply not good at, and it's communicating with droids and wielding the Darksaber.
Right.
Great father, though. There you go.
That's
the trade-off.
Yeah, I did enjoy the iRobot subplot there too. With although they didn't go quite that deep, it was more just a programming glitch put in there by Doc Brown / Klingon guy.
The one part of that episode reminded me of the Johnny Depp Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. At the end, he casually mentions, "Oh yeah, this is the doll burn and repair unit." Because at the beginning, he had like set fire to all the dolls that were doing the welcome to the factory thing, and they have a droid morgue. And I'm like, where'd they get this? Who's like, we have a droid morgue with individual like sliders and all that stuff where we do full diagnostic on them.
Yeah, there is no reason for that, but because we're doing a cop show episode, it's like, well, there's a scene where you have to go to the morgue and check out the body.
All right, so before we get into the end of the season and like final thoughts, I do want to ask, because we talked about the armorer being suspected by fans of being one of the spies. I didn't follow that line of thinking at all. I felt like that was very out of character for her. But with the episode called The Spies, I was curious if there were going to be more than just Katie O'Brien's character as the spy. I thought it might have been Axe Woves might have been one of the spies, just because he took off without any real threat to him. And I don't know. Did you guys buy into the multiple spies, or do you think there might still be more spies?
I have no opinion on this whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't really, I didn't think that complex about the titles, and apparently neither did anyone else. So when planning the titles, so I think I'm good on this one.
I think there are things that are a little suspect, like if these people live on the planet and skate around on it with their ice skate ship on a planet of glass, it is a little weird. They're like, oh yeah, we know where the Great Forge is. By the way, there's an entire Imperial base that we don't mention or know anything about. That is been a little weird, that portion. But other than that, I never thought the armorer was a spy or working with somebody else. I mean, you could argue that she's so dogmatic that she would work with anyone who could get her closer to Beskar, but that seems out of character. I, I didn't buy it.
Yeah, I was more suspicious of the guys that were roaming the planet still for 40 years than I was anyone else. But it didn't even dawn on me that there might be multiple spies, even with the title, until the internet started talking about the armorer and other things. And I was like, oh, maybe they're right. But nope, just another one of those fan theories that were very wrong. But the season ends overall with Din Djarin defeating the pirate. What the heck was his name? I have it here somewhere. I lost it. Not going to waste any more time doing that. He's had his little adventures. Grogu's got a mech. They defeat Moff Gideon. The dark saber has been destroyed, which I thought that was actually pretty nice, because the whole point of a lot of this season and Bo-Katan's arc especially is that they don't need tradition to rebuild Mandalore. They need a leader, and she is that leader that they need. And I like that one a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who's not seen Rebels, I have to admit, most of the time I'm like, y'all are fighting over a fancy sword. It's cool, but it doesn't have like magic properties, right? Like, it's just a sword. That's okay. It's a cool sword. That doesn't mean anything. You guys all being silent because I actually just said something really offensive to like Star Wars.
No,
I'm just giving everyone an opportunity to say some stuff.
So yes and no. Part of the reason why I love the armor is that she's dogmatic. She knows her beliefs. She doesn't carry a weapon, and whenever she says something, everybody listens. Even like Bo-Katan, there seemed to be like a very brief arc where she might not remove her helmet. She's in this new cohort, and she is working with them because she lost all her people, because she can't carry the dark saber because the Mando does. So there is a part that's like that that the dark saber does have belief. I mean, heck, it goes off of the Elder Wand rules, and that's what it takes to get all of her people back to her. So it being destroyed is a little weird. It seemed almost like an offhand, like Gideon showing to her that she was never able to properly wield it, so he destroys it to take it from her, kind of thing. But at the same time, what was needed to bring the Mandalorians back together was basically like, listen, some of us keep our helmets on, some of us don't. Shut the hell up. The forge is
Yeah.
the forge is back on, dudes. Let's party and make some Beskar.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I think you could also take the view that it's the dark saber, and again, I'm riffing on what I've seen of Mandalorian and like having seen all the Clone Wars, none of Rebels yet. So if there's anything that's like totally weird, just ignore me or like tell me that I'm wrong. But
I'll just edit it out.
Yeah. But I think you could also see it as like it's an important like cultural artifact that is necessary to like bring these disparate groups together, but it's no longer necessary. Like, we don't need it anymore. So like destroying it could be an act of defeat on Bo-Katan's part, or an act of failure, or whatever, however you want to say it. But you could also, I think, take the view that, like, well, we're past the need for that, at least that symbol, if not all symbols.
Then Catrina, I don't know if you, speaking of Rebels, I don't know if you got the same feels I did. For Matt's sake, I won't spoil it, but Grogu gave us a little bit of some Rebels flashbacks, and I was very nervous for a short period of time, and when he was saving everyone from that inferno.
Yeah, I really love the nods throughout the season toward Rebels. Like we of course we've had a show in the past, and there have been like little hints toward Star Wars Rebels and what happened in it. But like this season explicitly made it so that if you watched Rebels, like some things happened that really meant a lot to us fans. And again, Rebels is one of those seasons where it's one of those shows where Bo-Katan plays a really long, drawn out role. She and watching it all together, it just kind of feels this season felt like a really big payoff for like lifelong Bo-Katan fans. You know, like this was the she. My friends and I like to joke that like she's a victorious loser. That she's constantly stumbling and learning and being so distinctly human. She's like one of those characters who, when she's wrong, like she actually grows from it. And she's a badass, but she's also kind of a fuck up. And can I say that on the air? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
fine. We're
Okay.
explicit.
Fucking let her rip. Let her fucking rip.
Like that's what I love about Bo though, is that like she isn't this like perfect warrior. She's made a lot of really big mistakes in her past, and it has cost her everything. And to see like who she became in this season and how she like really truly finally came into her own, it was so satisfying. And still she has more growing to do as the leader of Mandalore now.
And the season ends with Din Djarin officially adopting Grogu, who is now Din Grogu, and
Papers are signed.
he is now a Mandalorian apprentice, and they must go on adventures together, as is the way. And Din Djarin finds Carson Teva in the space bar, but sadly Zeb is not there. And they make a under the table agreement that Carson Teva will notify Mando of any weird off-world things or non-Republic things happening that he can help out with. And Grief Karga gives him a nice little plot of land for him to just lay low for a while. And that's kind of the season. Oh, also IG-11 is back as the Marshal, which we'll see if that has any bearing on anything, or if it's just meant to cover up the fact that they need a Marshal after Cara Dune went off to the moon. What's that Poochie joke?
She went
Died
off
on her way back to her home planet.
Yeah.
Yes.
She went off to go be in really terrible conservative movies.
To go for an old reference, the plane spun in, there were no survivors.
Yeah, and Mandalorian did the side quest where you get a house in Skyrim. He's gonna put all his blocks of cheese there.
Perfect. I loved it. I mean that final shot felt so good. I was like, I could just stop here and not have anything bad happen to them ever again. But I know that's not the case. One of my ongoing observations whenever I go to Batu is the fact that not only is there now a helmet on the wall at Doc Ondar's that looks similar to the Mandalorian, but Grogu's chainmail is now hanging beneath it.
That's cute.
I'm like, what happened to them? Did they just sell it? Like, did they just pawn it off because Grogu outgrew it or something?
Yeah, he became old Grogu, but not
Yeah.
not the other old Grogu I mentioned earlier. It is interesting though, because it is funny watching this back to back with not to be myself, but the end of Picard, which is a show that similarly has a bunch of time at the end of it I guess, very minor spoilers, like dedicated to seeing where all these guys end up. But one of those is like a series finale, and also supposed to be like the end of like these characters, basically for the, it's supposed to be like a denouement of these characters for like the last 30 years, and the other is just a season finale. But it kind of feels like it's one of those season finales that feels like maybe they didn't know they're coming back, but that's not the case here because they're like the biggest show on Disney Plus. Um, but so it's just an interesting little, I don't have a point, I guess, which why am I talking? But it's just an interesting little thing to note that it's like, oh, we're really invested at the end here, making sure we know everyone gets a happy ending, but we're gonna have more adventures, which is cool.
Okay, Matt, I have to ask. I don't need a spoiler, but the ending of Picard, is it as good as All Good Things Must End Part 2?
No, but nothing could be.
Yeah, nothing. Okay, that's okay. Because
Yeah.
you're saying things. I'm like, this sounds like kind of like the ending of All Good Things, but
there are definitely those vibes to some degree, and there are some. I mean, we're getting into Picard talk now, and we can save that for later. But there are definitely also direct allusions to that episode too, because I think they know.
Yeah.
Oh, it's another series finale. So
my two Clone Wars people, Katrina and Matt. Do you believe that the armor may secretly be Rook cast? Because that is what the internet believes.
No, I don't believe it. Especially if, like, I don't know, if Emily Swallow is ever to remove her helmet for any dramatic reason, she certainly wouldn't look like Rook cast at all. And I know that, like, there are transitions from like screen to, or one screen to another, but I've never read Rook cast as a white woman. And so I think for me it would be kind of weird. Um, I kind of want her to be like a new character because she just had beliefs that I don't think parallel to what the armor has right now or could have grown into what the armor has right now. But with that said, that's a pretty cool theory and it would still be kind of sick if it were true.
yeah, I'll defer on that one to you, just because I'll be honest. When you said Rook cast, I was like, that sounds familiar, but I have to Google it. So I cannot say that I have enough knowledge of that character to have a strong opinion, and it's the first I've heard of that theory. So
the last thing I want to talk about here before we head out is the kind of Marvelization of this, because there is a lot of stuff in this series that I feel like is setting up towards Ahsoka and this eventual so-called Mandoverse movie, where I assume the movie would probably end up being called Heir to the Empire, where we're building towards the return of Thrawn. And how do you guys feel about this sort of storytelling where you have to watch season 3 of Mando and Ahsoka and the New Republic Squadron or whatever Carson Teva show is going to be, if they're going to do one, building towards a movie, whether it be a Disney Plus exclusive movie or a theatrical release? How do you feel about these breadcrumbs being laid out for fans to follow, building up to a movie instead of it just being like its own thing? And that's open to the floor. Anyone can answer at any time.
Yeah, I mean, I always kind of figured, especially after the Boba Fett spinoff, that there would be a lot like more shows that would tie into Mando, just because it's an era that we like haven't explored, and so much has to have happened in it in order for us to get to the sequel trilogy. So I don't think I'm over it already, or that I'm like, Marvel fatigued to the point where I don't want more Star Wars stuff. Um, but I don't know, like it's really an interesting thing because this is going to be like Dave's first like live action film contribution to the Star Wars saga, and like I'm sure that much of his team that came from animation to live action TV would also be coming up with him. So I think that it's going to be interesting, and I hope that it's great. I'm keeping my feelings pretty leveled about it, because Rebels again means a lot to me, and so what happens in Ahsoka and how that defines that story is going to kind of set the bar for how I feel about the series.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because you said like the Marvelization of Star Wars, which I don't think is inaccurate, but it's almost like more Marvel than Marvel to some degree, because something I've said, I think on episodes that may or may not have come out yet, is like I think there's a really big perception in Marvel that you have to watch everything, which I don't think is totally true, but I understand why that's the perception. And I think that is more true in Star Wars, at least as far as these shows go, right? Where, I know there are people who do not watch Book of Boba Fett who are frustrated because they went from Mandalorian season 2 and then started Mandalorian season 3, where it seems like we skipped over basically what the entire arc of season 3 seemed like it was going to be, with Mandalorian and Grogu getting back together, and also the thing with him losing his honor or whatever, however they phrased it. So I think that's a thing where I think it can, and that's a thing that I think sometimes frustrates me personally about Star Wars, as someone who likes Star Wars and probably watches and consumes this media more than the normal person, but not as much as like a super fan, right? I'm not reading a bunch of novels. I'm not, really up on, I had to Google Rootcast just 10 minutes ago, right? But the one of the things that can frustrate me about Star Wars as a franchise is how it just constantly has to tie into itself. Where like I don't when I was watching season 2 of Mandalorian and like Luke Skywalker shows up, that's a cool moment, but I was also like, I don't know, man. Like, does everything have to eventually meet with Luke Skywalker? Which is another conversation. I guess what I'm getting at is I can see how it'd be really frustrating where it's like, oh, if you didn't watch Ahsoka, maybe Mandalorian season 4 doesn't make any fucking sense to you. If will this movie, whatever it is, if it comes out in theaters, if it's a Disney Plus original, will it make any sense to someone who has not watched every single one of these shows? And I think that remains to be seen. I don't think I'm necessarily down on it, but it is an interesting thing where they are really tripling down right now on they expect you to watch everything.
See, I think, Matt, you're not gonna have to worry about having to watch everything else because midway through filming, when they fire him to hire J.J. Abrams, and the title crawl just says somehow Thrawn has returned and Gideon too, that's the answer. It's answered right there in the title crawl somehow.
You're right. You're right. They do fly now.
Alex, you just reminded me, I think in episode 1 of this season, or maybe it was episode 2, I had again, lots of Rebels callbacks and setups. We saw the Purrgil in a very early episode, which are those giant space whales that travel through hyperspace. That got my little Rebel heart giddy when I saw those.
I mean, I'll say this: y'all are eating good right now. If you've seen Rebels and like it, you're getting some good stuff. So I'm happy for y'all. I hope to join you someday.
See, I'm coming at this as somebody who refuses to watch everything Star Wars because I'm somewhat jaded as somebody who read and owned a lot of the quote unquote legends now. And I feel like Star Wars currently is trying to tease me into coming back to it because they're like, hey there, yeah, what's going on? We're bringing back Thrawn. Ooh, you're doing Heir to the Empire. Okay, I'm intrigued. Oh, you're bringing Boba Fett. You might actually do the Mandalorian armor trilogy. Oh, that's exciting. Okay, tell me more. Tell me more about all the things that you said. We don't count our legends and are thrown away, but now we want to bring you back with. That's kind of where I am with stuff. I enjoyed season 3. I think it was the weakest of all of them, but there is enough for me to be satisfied with. And right now, that's really all I need. Matt last week convinced me to watch Andor. I don't think that episode's come out yet.
You gotta watch it. If you haven't started it, you gotta watch it. It's so fucking good. I cannot get started on Andor again. I'm sorry.
But it's going to be hit or miss for me whether or not I watch everything. And that is the balancing act that they're going to have to do with the Mandalorian verse movie.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up here. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. Katrina, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us. This has been a podcasting dream of mine come true.
Oh, thank you. I had a lot of fun. It was really cool, like talking about the finale with you guys. So thanks so much
for
having
sure.
me.
Yeah, and for those of you, again, who might be going into Rebels for the first time, a great companion piece would be Hanging with Team Kanan. Find that on your favorite podcatcher.
It is on my radar.
Yes. We'll make him. You'll watch Rebels, and then suddenly you'll be like, "Oh man, why am I reading this Rebels-related comic? Why am I?" It'll be great.
So you can follow me on Twitter at Josh_Scar. You can follow the podcast at Talking Smack Pod. Matt, please tell everyone about our Discord.
All right, I'm gonna do the same shtick I always do. This episode, like every episode, tons of really great stream of consciousness ramblings from me. If you like that and want it in text form, just constantly without ending in your pocket, that's Discord, baby. Am I not selling it well? Is that a bad sell for the Discord? What do you think? We can talk about that later.
I enjoy it. You're our very own like internal Wikipedia, in my opinion.
Hey, you sold me on it. I'm on the Discord.
All right. Yeah, if I can win Alex over, I can win anyone over.
If you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, you have reviews, please email us at tsmackpod@gmail.com or submit them in the Discord, Twitter, any social medias that we may be on. Thank you to Leo Allen for our musical themes. Thank you to Beppo for our original avatars and Retro Ale Studios for our Ricky avatar. Please like, subscribe, rate, review. Katrina, please share your socials with everyone.
You guys can find me anywhere you want. If you look for Catrina, that's OHCATRINA on every social platform that I know of.
Alex, who's running our theme music this week?
Well, just for Matt, we're gonna run Picard, the theme song to that. We don't need our Talking Smack stuff. We just need Picard.
Wonderful.
For Katrina too. Is it Trekkie, Trekker? What would the proper term be? I don't know anymore. Trek fan. We'll just go with that.
That's good. Yeah, Trek fan is good.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening. Katrina, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I truly, sincerely appreciate it. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. Take care.
Bad baby. Oh, bad.
Sorry about that. He's young.
Right.